let me start from the beginning because I'm being proposed quite often these days in terms of COVID to advertise in the news, you know, so everybody's watching the news to understand what's going on with COVID. And I'm selling the joy of drinking beers. So I'm quite reluctant to associate my beers with actually the sad news of COVID. And I wonder whether you had something to recommend me.
Yes. Actually, that's going to be part of what we're talking about in terms of some research we've done about COVID advertising and the context. And I think that you have to determine what your objectives are and what your message is. If you want to look like you're caring and you have a serious message, then I'll jump ahead and tell you that you should put it in a serious context, like a news kind of program, so that there will be some congruence between the context of what you're talking about, and people will associate your brand with being responsible, with being serious. But if you're trying to communicate the joy of drinking your brand, the refreshment of your brand, then we have some other strategies for you.
Yeah. So you're going to start with your presentation, please?
Yes, I'm delighted to, and thank you. And I also want to thank Michael because he's given us the perfect setup in terms of underscoring the importance of context. And I think you'll also see when you see some of the research that Kimberly and I are going to present today, that he's done a wonderful job of creating a scary context for us to come through and give you some very positive news. And that will only propel the impact of our message. So thank you very much for that, Michael. Today, what we're going to do is pose the question of how can we make advertising more effective? And also hearkening to what Michael said, if you can't trust targeting, the best you might be able to trust is the experience of whoever is really in that audience in terms of the context of what they're experiencing. So the one thing you can control is the context of your programming. And by looking at the research and what it has to tell us about the fact that not one algorithm fits all, that you need to understand what your objectives are and to be able to therefore leverage what your different options are to reach different goals, that there's quite a bit that you can do to improve your advertising effectiveness. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kimberly.
Great. So thanks, Elissa. Before I start, I wanted to thank the ICOM team for such an excellent job in choreographing this event across multiple continents. You did a great job, and it was not lost on us in the upping of our techno skills here, so thanks. So today, Elissa and I want to talk about our research on the impact of context in advertising. And we all understand very clearly that no matter what platform we're dealing with, we don't consume ads in a vacuum. Contexts make a difference in what we see and how we see it. And broadcast show content that comes before or that precedes an advertisement actually influences how we experience promoted brands. So think about the impacts on programmatic auctions. Think about Google. They're the largest advertising auction house in the world. For them and all others, never before has programmatic auctions have had the capacity to utilize these emotional contexts between media or programming content and advertising. So like the two oranges that we just saw, that look different under different light, which is a property called metamerism. We know that we can have the same emotional metamerism between a show and an ad that alters our experience and how we consume the ads. Using emotional alignments, we now have the power to tune ad buying and selling algorithms for optimal brand impact and for the greatest increase on return on your ad spend. So today we're excited to talk about some neuroscience-based research that illustrates measurements of this kind of emotional congruence between program and ads. So over decades, economists Kahneman and Tversky had repeatedly shown that the feel of future losses feels more strongly than an equivalent future gain. And if we choose to classify programming content on the strength of its loss framing or gain framing, we can more accurately align media and content of ads by weighting auction algorithms with this kind of information. But which algorithms work best using this model based on gain and loss framing? We know context matters. So both academic literature and conventional wisdom suggest that serious or negative ads fare best in serious or loss context, like news or dramas, while upbeat or gain-framed ads perform best in positive aligned programming, such as content focused on comedy or musical performances. But this new work identifies a third alignment option that harnesses the power of an incongruent alignment. So specifically, we're going to provide evidence to suggest that there's a strong benefit to placing a gain-framed ad that follows loss-framed content like the news. So we measured a number of brain and body physiological responses in real time during the viewing of different alignment combinations of content and ads. We chose the long-running show from the United States, Survivor, because it offers both positive and negative framing content. And we conducted this research to determine which alignment combinations maintain the greatest in-moment attention, engagement, and emotional resonance through the lens of consumer neuroscience. So with respect to attention, visual attention, we measure the change in visual attention to the screen using eye tracking to show the changes in visual attention to the ad following the broadcast show content. And we found that the greatest increase in visual attention to the ad came from when a gain-framed ad, a positive ad, followed loss-frame broadcast content. In other words, when a gain follows a loss, it's a happy day for the brand. Now, using a different measure, facial coding, facial affect coding, looking at positive, neutral, and negative facial expressions and quantifying them, we found an increase in positive emotional affect during gain-framed ads that followed gain-framed content. And this has been documented as, it's been thought of as a kicker effect or an emotional amplification of the broadcast content's gain focus. While this is good news for joy, we saw that the visual attention in this condition was still an issue. And then moving on, so following the study, we asked a number of self-reported brand recall questions and found that unaided brand recall was greatest in conditions where there wasn't an alignment as identified by this kind of economic framing. So in other words, the incongruent pairings were more effective in unaided recall. And this study provides evidence that gain framing following loss is an effective recipe for ad success and should be considered in programmatic media. But we want to now talk about, we've established this misalignment, but now Elissa will go through a second study that highlights the effectiveness of alignments related to news content.
Okay, let's go right to the next page, given that we're cognizant of the time. So if you could go forward again. And I'm going to tell you about a different kind of study that really ties to Michael's question at the beginning, which is about COVID advertising. And this was a study that I did with another partner of mine at MediaScience, Dwayne Brand. And this had to do with looking at COVID advertising in the context of negative or loss type of programming, such as the news, as opposed to primetime comedy. And this is a different kind of scenario where we found that a serious topic, I'll say, or a negative loss frame in context of the news is much more effective in terms of positivity towards the brand, in terms of purchase interest and other kinds of attributes, as opposed to the incongruence of having something very serious come right after TV. That I call the bummer effect. And I think, if anything, there is a different kind of kicker effect that has like following like. Next page, please. And so here you see that the COVID-19 messaging performed best in the news environment, again, and that the ads run during comedy programming were not effective. Next page, please. Next page, please. So I want to get to the bottom line. And the bottom line is that context really matters. But not only that, you are at the control board. If you are in charge of the advertising, you're in charge of the media buying, to be able to decide what are your objectives and to therefore use context to the best of your ability. So if what you want to do is increase brand engagement, you can use future gain ads following loss segments. If you want to increase positive emotional associations, you can use gain framed ads following gain. And if you want to increase brand recall, you can leverage misalignment. So there are multiple scenarios for you to choose from to really get the desired effect. And you should not think of there only being one way to optimize your advertising. Thank you.